No, I get confused sometimes. There. I mean, you're not missing a single morning event. I try because we are small and we have to be respectful. That's how I see things. Yes, especially. Yeah. Yes.
Son Excellence, Madame Maia Sandu, présidente de la République de Moldova.
The sitting is opened. Very good morning, dear colleagues. I remind members, in order to be registered for the sitting, you need to insert your badge when you take the seat and keep it inserted for at least 30 seconds. You should also insert your badge in order to speak or vote. To request the floor, please the button request. I also remind the Assembly that members who have not submitted an annual declaration of interest are required to start any intervention with an oral declaration of interest or no interest, under paragraph 20 of the Code of Conduct for members of the Parliamentary Assembly. In order to allow more members to participate, I propose to reduce the speaking time in this afternoon's debate to 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. Is this fine with you? It seems it is. This morning, the agenda calls for the election of 2 judges to the European Court of Human Rights in respect of Cyprus and the Netherlands. The list of candidates and biographical notice are to be found in document 16302 and 16 in the revised version and 16312. The opinion of the committee is presented in document 16323 addendum 2. The voting will take place in the area behind the President's chair at 12:45. I shall announce the closing of the poll. As usual, counting will then take place under the supervision of 5 tellers. Each political group has appointed a teller according to the rules. They are Mrs. Sita Gurmai, Andrea Eder-Kitstala, Mr. Axel Kaseka, Mrs. Lucia Blavovkova, and Mr. Bernard Öztürk. I would like to remind them that they will have to be at the room set aside for this purpose. The result of the vote will be announced, if possible, at the opening of the afternoon sitting. For this first ballot, an absolute majority of the votes is required. If a second round has to be organized, that will take place this afternoon between 4 and 7 p.m. I now declare the ballot open, and we continue our work in the meantime. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now a great pleasure for me to welcome among us the President of the Republic of Moldova, Mrs. Maia Sandu. Madam President, your country is chairing the Council of Europe's Committee of Ministers for the second time in its history, at a particular decisive moment for our organization and for the whole continent. The priorities of your presidency, namely to support for Ukraine, accountability for the crime of aggression, support the new democratic pact for Europe, and the fight against disinformation and foreign information manipulation are all timely and highly relevant. We have all witnessed a dreadful impact of disinformation on democratic security across our continent, and we therefore welcome the decision to address this issue at the heart of your presidency's priorities. We also note and fully support your country's concrete action on the ground, notable in support of Ukraine. You have recently reaffirmed, Madam President, your country's strong European commitment and its determination to join the European family as swiftly as possible, a choice that further strengthens the Republic of Moldova's democratic path. Please be assured that the Parliamentary Assembly will stand firmly alongside your country to ensure the success of your presidency. With any further ado, it's my honor to invite you to have the floor.
President of the Assembly, Madam Petra Bayer, congratulations on your election. Secretary General Alain Berset, honorable members of Parliament, distinguished guests. Today, I want to speak about the 2 wars Europe is facing, how our democracies are being attacked, how those attacks are amplified by technology, and what we should do to protect our peace, our democratic choices, and our freedom. As Moldova holds the rotating presidency of the Council of Europe's Committee of Ministers, allow me to remind you that the Council of Europe was born from the failure of European democracies to protect themselves in time, from the realization that peace without democratic resilience is temporary. The Statute of the Council of Europe is explicit. Its purpose is to achieve greater unity, to safeguard human rights, to uphold democracy and the rule of law, not as ideals alone, but as systems that must withstand pressure manipulation, and abuse. The Council of Europe was never meant to be a comfort zone. It was meant to be a line of defense. And today, Europe is at war again. 2 wars, in fact. The first is visible, brutal, and devastating. Russia is waging a conventional, full-scale military invasion of Ukraine. Cities are destroyed. Civilians are killed. Energy infrastructure is deliberately targeted. This winter, millions of Ukrainians are living in darkness and cold, not because of the weather, but because the Kremlin has made freezing civilians a weapon of war. To break the will of a nation by making life itself unlivable. For most of us, this kind of suffering is impossible to imagine. But for Ukrainians, it is daily life. And it demands not only our solidarity, but our responsibility. For Moldova, the war is not distant. In Moldova, we know that we owe our peace to Ukraine's resistance. We know that if Ukraine falls, Russia will not stop at Moldova. Ukraine's fight is therefore about the security of Moldova, of the region, and of Europe as a whole. And this is also why there can be no lasting peace without accountability for Russia's aggression. Without justice, war does not end. It only pauses and prepares to return. Here, the Council of Europe has a vital role to play, not as a neutral observer, but as a political guardian of democratic values and international law. The accountability mechanisms developed within this organization, including the register of damage and work to ensure justice for victims, are essential to restore trust in the rules that protect us all. But while our attention is rightly focused on this war, a second war is unfolding. This is the war against our democracies. It is less visible, but it is not less dangerous. This war is being fought inside our societies. It is a hybrid war, an information war, a war to divide people and control our hearts and minds. This war is accelerated by technologies we do not fully see and understand, by algorithms that increasingly determine what people read, watch, and believe, while their logic remains largely opaque. These 2 wars are not separate. They reinforce one another. Russia's military aggression and its hybrid operations pursue the same objective: to undermine, control, and divide Europe. One destroys cities, the other erodes trust. One uses missiles, the other uses money, narratives, and manipulation. This is how democracies are attacked from within. At the core of this second war are 2 things: dark money and dark politics. Dark money fuels dark politics. Illicit financial flows make manipulation scalable and persistent. They pay for influence operations, political capture, and disinformation designed to divide societies and turn people against themselves, against their own state, democracy, and freedom. Moldova has been, and still is, on the front line of this second war. For 2 consecutive years, our country has faced massive electoral interference. It was multi-domain. An energy crisis designed to put economic pressure on vulnerable citizens, political corruption targeting parties and candidates, information warfare across online platforms, cyber operations aimed at institutions and voters, all with one objective: to seize parliament, install a Kremlin-controlled government, crush our democracy, drag Moldova into Russia's sphere of influence, and use it against Ukraine and against Europe. And if that failed, to delegitimize elections, provoke unrest, and weaken trust in our institutions. Social networks became central battlegrounds in this war. What we saw in Moldova was not a spontaneous expression. It was organized, funded, and scaled by AI. One single coordinated network of just 100 fake accounts on TikTok, operating for less than 3 months, generated around 50 million views, over 100,000 comments, and more than 1.5 million interactions in a country of 2.4 million people. The goal was to create a false impression of overwhelming anger and social collapse, to exhaust citizens, amplify fear, and discourage democratic participation. This was not an isolated case. We also documented the activity of an influence network already identified by European partners, which produced more than 1,000 coordinated publications about our country in just a few months. These messages accumulated tens of millions of views and were deliberately laundered through seemingly credible voices before being amplified by inauthentic accounts. This targeted Moldova's image abroad. When traditional propaganda channels were restricted, hostile actors adapted again. Content linked to Kremlin-affiliated broadcast media was delivered directly into people's homes through mobile applications, bypassing audiovisual regulations entirely. When exposed, these outlets did not disappear. They changed domain and jurisdiction, they rebranded and resumed operations within days. This adaptability tells us something essential. We're facing professional, well-funded, long-term operations built on the systematic identification of vulnerabilities, enabled by transnational infrastructure, and sustained by the exploitation of legal loopholes. Moldova is not the only country facing these challenges. We see similar pressure across Europe. I am proud to say that Moldova resisted in this 2-year assault through a whole-of-society effort. Our citizens proved their commitment to peace, to Europe, and to democracy. But I regret to see Georgia, where, despite the courage of the Georgian people who continue to stand up for democratic values, European aspirations, and the right to decide their own future, Russia pulled Georgia back into its orbit by weaponizing the fear of war, signaling that the wrong electoral choice would come at the cost of peace. Now, Armenia is becoming a target of the same strategy, aimed at weakening sovereignty, influencing democratic choices, and exploiting internal vulnerabilities. We stand with Armenia and its people as they work to resist these pressures and defend their democratic future. Among all the ways this hybrid war is waged, the most dangerous for the future of our democracies is information manipulation amplified by technology, opaque algorithms, and artificial intelligence. If left unchecked, those who control technology will increasingly control how people think. I'm particularly concerned about the impact of this cognitive war on the younger generation. If we want democracies that can resist manipulation, we must protect the freedom of young minds. This is not only a question of technology or regulation. It is a question of democratic resilience. Trust, critical thinking, and mental well-being are essential conditions for free societies. The Council of Europe has already given us a clear starting point. Children's rights apply fully online, and states have a responsibility to protect their best interests in the digital environment. Moldova's experience shows why this matters. Disinformation works by exhausting societies, by making people fearful, divided, and distrustful. And it is especially effective where young people are left unprotected in digital space designed to exploit attention and emotion. This brings me to what I think we should do. Long-term efforts alone will not meet the urgency of this threat. You do not respond to a patient in cardiac arrest by announcing a long-term public health strategy. You act immediately. You stabilize the patient. You stop the bleeding, and then you invest in prevention and resilience. Today, our democracies are under acute attack. Treating this only as a long-term challenge, while elections are actively manipulated and institutions destabilized, leaves democracies exposed at the very moment they need protection. We must act at the speed of the threat, and we must protect our democracies without betraying democratic principles. Here, the Council of Europe has a unique role to play. We need a clear and comprehensive legal instrument on foreign information manipulation and interference, one that addresses election interference, media concentration and capture, organized crime, cybercrime, corruption, and the malign use of artificial intelligence and other technologies. This should allow us to act before damage is done, not after. After 2 years of resisting Russian interference, here is what has worked for us. Coordinated disinformation campaigns must be exposed and disrupted before they shape voters' perceptions and distort democratic debate. For this, journalists and civil society must be protected. Foreign interference and proxy actors must be exposed before trust in election is undermined. Illegal party financing must be checked before those who benefit from it gain power through the ballot box. And I cannot emphasize elections enough. In democracies, they are the most vulnerable entry point for foreign manipulation and the most decisive one. This is where trust can be broken fastest, where disinformation has the greatest impact, and where illicit money can translate directly into power. This is why monitoring must begin months before voting day and extend fully into the online space. Digital interference must be detected in real time, not reconstructed afterwards. And illegal money must be identified and stopped before it distorts the will of voters. Cutting off the financial lifelines of interference, including through cryptocurrency, is essential to stopping manipulation at scale. The work of the Financial Action Task Force and Moneyval has been essential in strengthening anti-money laundering frameworks across Europe. Moldova is also largely compliant with Moneyval standards. Yet, our experience shows that even strong ALM systems are not enough. We lacked the legal and operational tools to act fast against illicit financial flows specifically designed to interfere with elections. Money fuels interference. Technology amplifies it. Therefore, we must govern the digital space responsibly. The internet and social platforms have strengthened freedom and connection. They are among humanity's great innovations. But no invention exists without rules. Electricity requires safety standards. Cars require traffic rules, especially near schools. The digital space is no different. Children's well-being must be protected. Freedom of expression must be protected from fake accounts posing as free voices. Artificial intelligence must be governed with care. Taken together, these are acts of democratic self-defense, and they define whether democracy remains a living system or becomes an open target. So we must move faster than the threat and take the initiative. The Council of Europe was created for moments like this, not when democracy is comfortable, but when it is contested. Moldova's presidency of the Council of Europe will act with this responsibility in mind. Thank you. pretty much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sandou, for your most relevant speech. Moldova indeed is a model for resistance in hybrid attacks, and I think that we all can learn a lot of you. Members of the Assembly have questions to put to you now. We will first hear questions from the speakers on behalf of political groups, followed by a response from Mrs. Sandou to each of these questions. I remind that the questions are limited, must be limited to 30 seconds and no more. Colleagues should be asking questions, not making statements. So with that, I first call on behalf of SOC, Mr. Piero Fassino.
Grazie Presidente. Grazie intanto per l'intervento molto efficace che ha fatto. La domanda che io le voglio porre.
You need to switch on the microphone again,
Sì.
Piero.
Non funzionava. Grazie ancora Presidente per l'intervento molto efficace che ha fatto e a tutta la nostra amicizia, la nostra solidarietà, come si è visto nell'applauso che l'ha salutata. La domanda che le voglio fare riguarda un punto molto critico del futuro della Moldavia. Come pensa che possa essere risolta la questione della Transnistria, che da tempo è una regione ovviamente su cui c'è una forte pressione separatista, e come voi pensate di risolvere o affrontare questo problema?
Thank you very much, Mrs. President.
Conflict is one of the big challenges, and the conflict was provoked by Russia, and Russia continues to try to use it against the Republic of Moldova. We are fully committed to solve the situation, and we're fully committed to solve it peacefully. Steps have been made recently, especially on the economic reintegration of the country. We see more and more people from the Transnistrian region, from the left bank of Nistru, coming to work on the right bank of Nistru. We see a significant change in the trade. More than 70% of the exports from this region now are going to the EU countries, while in the past 100% was going to Russia. So the changes are happening, but of course the biggest impediment to the full reintegration is still the illegal presence of the Russian troops. This is the problem that we need to find a peaceful solution in order to be able to move on with the process. And again, we're fully committed to the peaceful resolution of the conflict, and we do count on your support in making sure that Russia withdraws its illegal troops from our territory.
Thank you very much. The next question on behalf of EPP comes from Mr. Inod Marian Strauer.
Madam President Sandou, the EPP Group, of course, reaffirms its strong support for 2026 agenda focused on resilience, security, pro-European commitment and reforms. And in the context of Russia's ongoing aggression and increasing hybrid pressure, do you believe that Moldova risks becoming one of the next direct targets of the Russian Federation? And if so, is the current European and international support sufficient to provide real security guarantees for the country? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. President.
As long as Russia continues to attack Ukraine and kill civilians, and as long as it does not respect the territorial integrity of other countries, everybody is in danger. And of course, Moldova is in the region. As I've said, we're safe today thanks to the resistance of Ukraine. We're grateful for the support that all the countries are providing to Ukraine, and we're grateful to the support we receive to increase our resilience. But for us to feel safe, means to be part of the EU, and that's why we're working so hard on that. And of course, the Russian aggression is a big danger for everybody, not just for countries in Eastern Europe.
Thank you. The next question on behalf of ECPA from Mrs. Katalin Söber.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. On est toujours pour l'adhésion des pays de l'Est, des pays de Balkans, notamment la Moldavie aussi, sur l'adhésion à l'Union européenne. Et on sait que vous faites beaucoup d'efforts pour y parvenir, lutter contre la corruption et considérer les systèmes judiciaires. Vous faites plein de réformes, mais le processus reste quand même assez lent. Alors, il y a un autre cas. Par exemple, l'Ukraine, beaucoup de monde qui veulent une adhésion plus accélérée. Trouvez-vous c'est juste vis-à-vis de la Moldavie ou quel est le message vers le peuple moldave qui font les espoirs depuis des années? Merci.
Mrs. President.
Well, yes, we would like to move faster on the EU integration. And not just us, but all the candidate countries, I believe. We've been working hard. We have made some progress. We still have work to do. We still have reforms to implement. But we're really working very hard, and you could see even in the last year report of the European Commission that Moldova was the country which made the biggest progress. In this current environment, when especially for small countries, things look very dangerous. There is this urgency to move on, both on the part of the candidate countries, but also on the part of the EU institutions. We do know that there is a discussion in EU about the decision-making process, and we do appreciate the problems, but we do hope that the solutions will be found quickly. We know that there are other issues, but I do believe that we should show commitment to a speedy and proper process, because I do believe in a merit-based approach. But on both sides, we need to move fast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of ALDE, Mr. Julian Bulay.
Doamna președintă și bun venit în Casa Democrației. Congratulations for the great results of the elections in 2024-25 and for fighting back the hybrid war. Thank you for what you did for the huge amount of Ukrainian refugees being welcomed so properly by the Moldovan people. That's so important, a country with so little resources doing so much. Thank you. Our question is, what can we do as parliamentarians in 2026 to better help a quicker integration of Moldova in the European Union, both as Council of Europe and members of the national parliaments? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Council of Europe has been helping us with the major reforms. This is the anti-corruption effort, the strengthening of the capacity of the anti-corruption institutions, and with the justice sector reform, which is not an easy effort, but to which we're fully committed. Of course, all the other areas with respect to providing for human rights and so on. So we would like to continue to count on the Council of Europe's support and all the institutions that have been working with us. Otherwise, as bilaterally, as EU countries, of course, you can contribute to finding the solutions to the problems just I mentioned, so that the EU accession process will continue. Moldova has shown resilience, but the dangers to democracies and especially to smaller countries are not going to disappear in 2 years from now, in 3 years from now. We need to act together. And I also want to believe that everybody is taking this seriously, because in the case of Moldova, the Russian interference has been brutal. It was easier for people to see it. It was easier for us and for the civil society, for the press, to expose it. in some of your countries, this interference is not going to be that brutal and that multi-dimensional, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be, it can be damaging and dangerous, especially the manipulation of information, which is not easy for people to see and understand, but which can have significant effect on our democracies. So I think we need to work together, we need to learn together, we need to protect together our democracies.
Thank you very much. And Laura Castel concludes the round of the spokespersons on behalf of the groups for UL.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations, dear Petra. Madam President, in a recent interview, you stated that you support Moldova's unification with Romania, an European Union member state. Does your statement reflect a plan B of European integration of Moldova through Romania? In other words, should this position be understood as an alternative strategic model for Moldova's integration, or does your government remain committed to European integration as a sovereign state under its own constitutional framework? Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President.
It is fully committed to the EU integration process. We have the support of the majority of people, as it has been seen in the recent referendum, despite Russia's attempts to interfere. I do want Moldovans to be safe, and I do want Moldova to stay part of the free world. And I am concerned with what is happening today in the world. And again, our strategy, fully supported by the majority of people, is the EU integration. We're working very hard on the EU integration. We are making genuine efforts and genuine reforms, and we do hope that the EU is going to take the decision before it is too late.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to other speakers and take them in groups of 3, and after 3 would pass to Mrs. President. And I once again want to remind you that you must limit your questions to 30 seconds. Victoria Diplom.
Thank you, Madam President. My query might be slightly off the beaten track, but is one increasingly raised in international media, namely the large number, some estimates say over 20,000, of stray, abandoned and homeless dogs in both Chisinau and in the countryside. I have seen a lot of these stray dogs on my 2 visits to Moldova. I even saw a small dog running around the street with just a broken leg dangling. These dogs are affected by not just heat and cold, also starvation and the spread of rabies. I'm curious to learn how your government is tackling this problem. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam Deborah Bergamini.
Presidente, lei ha descritto bene come oggi la Repubblica di Moldova sia un crocevia geopolitico che raccoglie tutte le speranze ma anche tutte le preoccupazioni di noi europei. Una di queste riguarda l'energia. Vorrei chiederle come state affrontando le difficoltà energetiche che avete anche alla luce della riduzione della vostra dipendenza dai fornitori tradizionali. Grazie.
Thank you. And finally, Madame Bianca Eugenia Gavraglia. She's obviously not in the room. So then we proceed to Bisera Kostatnikovka Stoichachevska.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam President, thank you for being with us today. Moldova, under your leadership, became a lesson in resilience in the fight with foreign interference. With Moldova's presiding with the Committee of Ministers, how do you plan to address this issue? Thank you.
Madam President, please, if you would like to respond.
Yes, thank you very much. On the first question, indeed, we do have this problem. The Parliament actually adopted a law recently it's not enough to adopt a law. You need to make sure that the law is properly implemented, and you need to make sure that you have the capacity, both, especially at the local level, because this is an issue which has to be dealt by the local authorities. But it is an issue for discussion for the Parliament, as I said, and we are trying to improve the situation. I actually adopted myself a dog with 3 legs. His name is Kodruts. By now, I adopted a second stray dog, and at the presidency, we have 2 of them. This is also to show example to the people that we need to take care of animals. But we will continue to work on that. On the question of energy, I have to say that we have actually done a lot on energy diversification. 4 years ago, Moldova was 100% dependent on Russian gas and almost entirely dependent on electricity produced from Russian gas. Today, we don't consume any Russian gas, and we are very advanced in finishing a high-voltage electricity line, which is going to connect us to the EU market. So we have done a lot. We also invested a lot in renewables. When I became president, only 3% of our energy consumption was coming from renewables. Today, it's more than 25%, and we are very ambitious in our plans. So it's been difficult, very tough. It's still not easy, because every time Russia targets Ukraine's electricity system, it can also affect Moldova's electricity system, because we are connected. So the danger is still there. But we really have done a very good job in trying to diversify energy. And now it's more difficult for Russia to interfere. They have to come up with all this, cyber attack, manipulation of information, and so on. In the past, they will just switch off gas, and then they will paralyze the country. So we got rid of this dependency. On the lessons on resilience, this is what I tried to explain today, to share a bit of our experience. And of course, we are ready to talk about more specific issues, because as I said, the interference of Russia in our 3 elections has been multi-domain, and we have learned a lot. We were better prepared in 2025 than before. It was a whole of society effort. It was very important to have not only the government expose this interference, but also independent actors, because then people will trust it more. What has worked in our case, especially for the last year elections, was a very good coordination between government institutions. Because you do need to have the anti-money laundering institution working together with the Central Electoral Committee, with the intelligence, with the anti-corruption, with police, with the tax inspectorate, because a lot of illicit money has been involved. We estimate that in the 2025 parliamentary elections, Russia spends something around 2% of Moldova's GDP. So you can imagine how much money this was and how difficult it was to trace the money. And of course, you always need to trace the money to understand who is behind this. So we're ready to share our experience, and also we hope that together we can deal with these big challenges that manipulation of information amplified by technology is going to put on our democracies in the future.
Thank you very much. The next on the speaking list is Mrs. Sanda Kalnina Lukashevitsa.
Thank you, President. And Madam President, thank you so much for your speech today and for your leadership that inspires us continuously. Moldova has shown incredible democratic resilience in the face of foreign interference, and Moldova's institutions and civil society and citizens indeed demonstrated their capacity to protect the integrity of the electoral process. I planned to ask you if, based on your experience, you could share with the Assembly which factors were most decisive in resisting the interference attempts, and what lessons other European democracies should draw when preparing to counter similar actions from a Russian Federation. But you elaborated on that already in detail during your speech, and also the previous question went exactly the same direction. So thank you so much for sharing with us And if there is one concrete action that this Assembly should do, I think we are very ready to act immediately. Thank you.
I will take three together, no problem, and I want to remind you that it is for asking questions. So the next is Monika Bartosz.
For your presentation, Madam President. Tackling migration-related changes is now on the agenda of Council of Europe, and foreign ministers are expected to adopt a political declaration on migration at their meeting in May. Despite the serious challenges, Europe is still divided. How can diverging views and opinions expressed so far be reconciled in the process leading to the meeting in May? Thank you for your answer.
Mr. Bertrand Bouix.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Madame la Présidente, vous avez déjà abordé ce sujet avec l'une de nos collègues, mais je souhaitais revenir sur votre déclaration concernant la réunification avec la Roumanie, réunification pour laquelle vous êtes déclaré favorable. C'est une manière, je présume, d'affirmer votre choix net et définitif pour une intégration pleine et entière avec la famille européenne. Pouvez-vous expliciter votre position et nous dire quelles conséquences elle a eues, le cas échéant? Merci.
Thank you very much. And now over to you, Mrs. President.
Thank you very much. As I've said before, I really hope that we can discuss and come up with solutions on how to defend free speech from the non-authentic accounts and the amplification of this information provided by non-authentic accounts. I do believe that this is something we need to work on, and together with the Secretary General, we've been discussing these issues, and I do believe that this is the most dangerous issue for our democracies in the future. So we're ready to work on different aspects of limiting foreign interference in our elections, but the manipulation of information is the most damaging one in my view, and we're ready to work on that. On migration, I know that this is a complicated discussion among the member countries. As the country which holds the presidency, it's our obligation to ensure the venue for a discussion so that a consensus on the issue would be achieved. Of course, we support the independence of the court. We also understand the concerns of some of the countries. So we will try to have as many discussions and provide for a proper environment for this discussion, hoping that we could come up with a solution that will be satisfactory to all parts, which is not easy, I understand that. On the unification, I gave an honest answer to a question. I am concerned with the situation my country is today in. I do believe in democracy, and the choice of the Moldovans today is to pursue with the EU integration. I'm fully committed, as the government is fully committed for the EU integration. And we do hope that we will not find new impediments, and we do hope that all the EU member states will continue to be committed to the enlargement process. This is very important, and at the same time, we're very concerned. As I said, it is very important for Moldova to stay part of the free world. We don't want to be under Russia's influence. We don't want to be under Russia's occupation. We understand this, what it means, and I want Moldovans to be safe, and I want Moldova to be free.
We now conclude the questions with the last three speakers. First one is Mrs. Larissa Bilosir.
Madam President Sandu, Moldova and Ukraine are advancing together in parallel tracks on our European integration path, simultaneously facing severe challenges while Ukraine is facing unprecedented war of Russian aggression and Moldova is facing hybrid war. How do you see the coordination between our two countries within the Council of Europe framework to strengthen our country's democratic resilience, judicial independence, and rule of law in times of war and crisis? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Oleksiy Goncharenko is next.
Thank you, dear President. President Sandu, first of all, on behalf of Ukrainian people, I want to thank you for your constant support of our country in these very difficult times. But my question is about elephant in the room, Transnistrian elephant. You know, this part of Moldova, which is occupied by Russia, became the black hole and base for Russian hybrid threats and intelligence. This is the wound in body of Moldova, but inflammation comes even further. The whole region feels this inflammation, including Ukraine. So how and when you plan to deal with this issue? Thank you very much.
And finally, Titus Kalatian.
Madam President, bună ziua și bine ați venit. The European Union decision for starting the negotiations with Republic of Moldova, but also with Ukraine on the first clusters and chapters for the EU accession is blocked for more than 1 year for unfair reasons that you perfectly know. How do you see the perspectives and modalities for a fast exit from this blockage and for finally starting these negotiations? Romania is a strong supporter for that. Thank you.
And Madam President?
Thank you very much. Indeed, Moldova and Ukraine are working hard on their EU commitments. It is much more difficult for Ukraine to reform and to implement these reforms while it is resisting Russia's aggression. The two countries have similar reforms to implement, and I mentioned here the justice sector reform, the anti-corruption efforts, strengthening the institutions. And this is where the Council of Europe is helping us, and this is where the Council of Europe is helping you. And sometimes we need to find, new solutions, and we are happy to see the openness of the institutions here, because, for instance, when you need to resist Russia's interference, some of the old standards might not be actual and might not be enough for us to be efficient in resisting that. So I do believe that we should continue to work together to learn from each other and to advance on our EU path. And it is in the interest of Moldova for the EU to be for the Ukraine to be a EU member state, and it is in the interest of Ukraine for Moldova to be a EU member state, because otherwise we know that Russia can use Moldova against Ukraine as well. On the Transnistrian region problem, we have worked very hard since the war began not to allow for the region to become unstable and to drag the country into the war. This would not help anybody. We are fully committed to a peaceful resolution of the conflict. It's not that easy when Russia refuses to withdraw its troops, which station illegally on our territory. We are making steps, and as I said, we're making steps especially towards the economic reintegration. There are changes, but we will continue to look for a peaceful solution, for a peaceful withdrawal of the Russian troops from our territory, because we want to preserve peace for our people. On the opening of the formal negotiations, I believe this is a question to the member states and a question to the EU institutions. This is a merit-based approach. Both Moldova and Ukraine have fulfilled the conditions to formally open the negotiations on several clusters. This is stated in the evaluation reports done by the Commission last year, both for Moldova and Ukraine. We are working, regardless of the fact that the negotiations haven't been formally opened, but we know what the benchmarks are, and we're working towards that. But since this is a merit-based process, we do expect the EU institutions and the member states to come up with a solution.
Madam President, on behalf of our Assembly, I really want to thank you warmly for your address and for answering our questions so concisely. We are also very happy that you will attend at our ceremony later today. It's also together with your minister, Michael Popsoy, which we will have the chance to hear tomorrow. And it's also the point where I want to wish you, yourself, and your country all the best for the future. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I must remind you that the vote is in progress to elect the 2 judges to the European Court of Human Rights. The poll will close at 12:45. For those who have not yet voted, please go and do so. It's behind the space here. And we now come to hear the address from our Secretary General, Mr. Alain Berset. After his address, he will take questions from the floor. Dear Secretary General, dear Alain, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you at the very beginning of my mandate. We already had the chance to exchange yesterday afternoon, and we are most happy that you will address our Assembly as we are used to at the beginning of the year. I truly believe that the combined efforts of our 2 statutory bodies are more than ever necessary to address the profound challenges we are facing today, and I'm quite sure that we will find a path towards democracy and a human rights-based future. I'm confident that we will work very well together during my mandate in a spirit of close and constructive cooperation. And with that, I would like to give you the floor. Thank you very much.
Tell them to take their seat and
Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Madam President of the Parliamentary Assembly, Excellencies, dear members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, ladies and gentlemen, it's really for me an honor to address you at the opening of this parliamentary year. And I would like also, if you allow me, Madam President, to start by congratulating you for your election. Dear Petra, you bring long experience to this role. You take on this responsibility at a decisive time for Europe, and I look forward to working closely with you in the months and years ahead.
Thank you.
And I also want to take this occasion to warmly thank the outgoing President, Theodoros Rousopoulos, for the very good collaboration we had in the last years, and for his very strong commitment to the Council of Europe and to our shared values. Excellencies, dear members of the Parliamentary Assembly, I stood before this Assembly for the first time 16 months ago. It was in September 2024, just days after taking office. And that same week, at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Venezuela's foreign minister said it was time to rescue the founding principles of the UN Charter. At the same time, in Brussels, the outgoing NATO Secretary General insisted that the alliance was strong, united, and more important than ever. In the United States, a presidential candidate said he had a very good relationship with both President Zelensky and President Putin and promised to end the war in Ukraine very quickly. After the first and only presidential debate, he was trading in the polls. And in Greenland, the headlines were about a landslide that triggered a tsunami in a remote fjord. That was the world we thought we knew. So, why are we acting surprised? This rupture did not come out of nowhere. Firstly, after the Cold War, Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons in exchange for the assurance that its sovereignty and borders would be respected, and that force would not be used against it. And by the time Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, that assurance was broken, not once, but twice. Secondly, I want to mention the financial crisis of 2008, which exposed years of greed and speculation. Jobs disappeared, public debt exploded, and it was people, not the banks, who paid the price everywhere. Accountability stopped with those too big to fail. Thirdly, I can mention the COVID-19 pandemics that also led us to where we are today. In the first weeks of the pandemic, flights stopped and borders closed. Governments competed for masks and for vaccines. As fear spread, misinformation filled the gaps. Just add to this climate change, multilateralism on life support, and the return of certain forms of populism thought long gone. And we entered what I called the perfect storm. This can give the illusion that we are witnessing something entirely new, but we are not. What is new? What is really new in this situation is the acceleration of crisis. It comes with a constant flow of information. It comes with the volatility it creates. By now, the patterns are clear. Positions change within days, if not hours. Threats are made only to be reversed. A so-called board of peace is announced in an attempt to sideline the United Nations. Now we are not naive. Power politics have always existed. What is troubling is where they are appearing, within alliances and not outside. Inside spaces built on law, consent and predictability. And that is why we are speaking of a rupture in the world order. We are at a turning point in understanding world power and Europe's role in it. And today, that struggle is framed in terms of security, from national security to energy security, border security, and cyber security. It is invoked to justify decisions abroad and to reshape politics at home. As we see in Greenland, it reaches even questions of territory. Europe is told that insisting on international law is naive in an age of hard power, that rules must bend for security. But just look at where this leads. We are hearing threats of military action over territory of a member state. Once security becomes the overriding logic, everything else becomes negotiable, including sovereignty. And international law remains the last common language capable of restraining power in a fragmenting world. Institutions dedicated to democracy, human rights, and the rule of law are no longer at the margins of security debates. They are now Europe's center of gravity. And the Council of Europe, our institution, was exactly built for this. Europe does not need to choose between law and security. That is a false choice. Law is Europe's form of power. Law creates autonomy without domination. It creates cooperation without submission, and security without surrender. This is what we mean. This is exactly what we mean by democratic security. Charles Dickens wrote A Tale of Two Cities at a moment when an old order was breaking and no one knew what would replace it. And Europe is facing once again two possible worlds. One where security is reduced to force and sovereignty becomes negotiable. And one where security is built on rights, on institutions, on law. And what will happen next, what happens next, depends on the choices we make and the choices we make now. And there are mistakes we cannot afford. First, we cannot let competing crises pull us off course. Ukraine risks being pushed into this background as the crisis competes for attention. That would be a serious mistake. This war has not paused. Strikes on infrastructure are leaving people without heat in sub-zero temperatures. And its outcome will shape Europe's future for decades to come. Secondly, international law is not dead. The Council of Europe was founded on the idea that law, not raw power, must guarantee the dignity and rights of individuals and the sovereign equality of states. And Europe must act to protect its legal framework, and the Council of Europe is ready to play its part. If we fail in Europe to articulate a legal and political vision, others will fill the vacuum, shifting security from law to strategic leverage. And finally, middle powers are not powerless. Principles without power are fragile, but power without principles is really dangerous. And the space between great powers is not empty. It is where Europe must act. In Greenland or crises like Venezuela, this moment cannot be reduced to a binary choice between sterile condemnation and blind support. In both cases, we abdicate our own responsibility. Europe's task is different and must be different. To refuse a world governed by exceptions, to refuse a world governed by double standards or competing spheres of influence. And to insist that security cannot be built by bargaining away the principles, the very principles that sustain it. You know, as Maia Sandu, the President of Moldova, told us before, the Council of Europe was not created for moments of comfort. It was exactly created for moments like what you are witnessing right now, when the rules of the old order are no longer assumed, even among those who wrote them. What other organization in Europe exists to confront exactly this question? Not as a military actor, not as a market, but as a legal community of 46, bound by commitments that cannot be rewritten in crisis. And I think that gives us a particular responsibility, and we are exactly acting on it. When Russia launched its war of aggression against Ukraine, we did not abandon law in the name of force. The opposite, we built accountability where none existed before. As you know, the register of damage is operational. In last December, states signed a convention establishing the International Claims Commission, and last week we launched the advanced team for the special tribunal for the crime of aggression. When the fighting stops, the Council of Europe will still be there. 4 institutions, 4 elections, 4 democratic recovery. I can also mention migration. On migration, Europe is also told there are only 2 options: to abandon legal constraints in the name of control, or to defend principles while ignoring legitimate pressures. And this is another false choice. On the road to Chisinau, ministers are working within the European Convention on Human Rights to ensure that security and legality move together. And the third element, information. Information itself has become a security issue. Polarization is engineered, is amplified by platforms, by generative AI, and by foreign interferences. And that is why the Council of Europe is working on a new convention on disinformation and foreign interference. Not to police speech, but to protect democratic choice. So no democracy is left to face this alone. Sometimes Europe is told that it is weak, that its values are outdated, that history is passing it by. I think the danger is not only that others say this. The danger is that we begin to believe it ourselves. We face temptations as dangerous as the threats. One is sentimentality. Sentimentality to speak eloquently of values, to issue solemn declarations, and quietly accept irrelevance. Another is atrophy, to hold on to old structures even as they stop working, and to mistake continuity for strength. Neither will protect us. Another way is possible, and it is already taking shape. In Ukraine, by building accountability that will outlast the war. On migration, as I just mentioned before, by refusing to surrender our legal standards in the name of control. On disinformation, by defending democratic debates before it is captured or manipulated. In every place where democratic choice is under pressure. I think the deepest rupture is today is not just geopolitical, it is democratic. And in the coming month, we will announce the next stage of our work with democratic security as our continent's answer to the emerging world order. Europe does not need a kind of me-first politics. Europe needs something different. Democracy first. Rule of law first. And human rights first. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General, for your important address. We will now hear questions from the speakers on behalf of the political groups, followed by a response from the Secretary General to each of those questions. Please, the speaking time is limited to 30 seconds, you know that already, and I would like to remind colleagues to really ask questions and not give any speeches. So I now turn to the representative from the SOC group, Sita Gurmai, please, your question. Sita.
Thank you very much. Congrats, President, colleagues. Mr. Secretary General, we are experiencing unprecedented changes in the international system, as you just mentioned, a subject you have also addressed in your recent articles and before the Committee of Ministers, recalling the risk that military security represents without democratic control. In your view, what role can the Council of Europe play in this rapidly changing world? And what relevant instrument do we have at our disposal to strengthen democratic security? What role is the new Democratic Pact for Europe called upon to play in this? And how can we support women in all that? Thank you.
That were many questions. Allah, please.
Sorry, thank you for the question. I think I addressed also a part of those elements in my speech before, but thank you for insisting on this, because democratic security is exactly what we can deliver and where we are strong, and what the continent and the member states can also expect from us to do. And what I can add to my intervention before is we need to be very concrete. We need to be very concrete, and not just, to speak, not just to have some words and good intentions, but to be very concrete. Where is starting democracy? It is starting with accountability. That's the first point. Accountability is part of democracy. What means democratic process? It means to have the choice to decide how we want to see a country governed, and then the population can decide if it is good or not good, if they want to change something. This is pure accountability. And in the context that we are facing right now, accountability in the context of Ukraine is what we are doing with the European Court on Human Rights, Register of Damage, Claims Commission, and Special Tribunal. That's the first point. The second point, I think, democratic security is to protect democracy, democratic processes. And we see, and I mean, the intervention before the President of Moldova was really impressive, exactly on this. We are observing in detail what was happening in Moldova for the election in 24 and what was happening for the election in 25. And we are also witnessing in other countries huge threats about the well-functioning democracies. And it is a point that we address in the new Democratic Pact for Europe. When I say very concrete, I also mentioned the Convention on Foreign Interference and Disinformation that we are working on. This is much more than words. It is like a kind of toolbox that member states should have at disposal to use to protect democracy, knowing, because there is, a discussion before on this, knowing that those tools are compliant with the European Convention on Human Rights. This is a concrete example that we need to work on. I could have a long list. It will be part of the new Democratic Pact for Europe, and thank you also for your strong support that I feel for this work that we are doing together.
Thank you. Next one is Mrs. Eda Kitzstahler on behalf of EPP. Liebe Andrea.
Gratulation, liebe Petra, zur Präsidentin. Ich freue mich sehr, dass eine österreichische Frau das geworden ist. Herr Generalsekretär, Sie haben kürzlich in einem Artikel in der New York Times gesagt, dass Sie hinter Trumps Vorstoß in Sachen Grönland die Rückkehr einer Logik aus dem Kalten Krieg sehen. Und Sie haben uns heute auch gesagt, dass wir an einem Wendepunkt sind. Wie sehen Sie die künftige Positionierung des Europarats in diesen schwierigen Zeiten zwischen EU, USA, China und Russland? Mit welchen konkreten Maßnahmen wollen Sie die Positionierung des Europarats stärken, auch hinsichtlich des angekündigten Austrittes der USA von der Venice-Kommission? Vielen Dank.
Lieber Alain.
Ja, vielen Dank für diese Frage und auch für die Erwähnung von Greenland und auch diesem Artikel in der New York Times. Mein erster Punkt ist, dass es ist keine große Überraschung, was da passiert ist. Oder wir dürfen nicht total überrascht werden. Ich muss hier erinnern, dass die ganze Diskussion über Greenland seitens von Präsident Trump war schon präsent in der ersten Mandat von Präsident Trump zwischen 16 und 20. Nicht mehr als erwähnt, aber es war erwähnt. Und letztes Jahr, es war auch klar erwähnt, und dann dieses Jahr, es war so wie eine große Eskalierung auf diese ganze Frage. Das ist der erste Punkt. Der zweite Punkt, dass für uns in Europa und auch für Dänemark und auch für Greenland, es ist wirklich ein bisschen schwierig zu sehen, wo wir sind, wenn wir denken an den Aggressionskrieg von Russland in der Ukraine und auf der anderen Seite eine sehr langjährige Zusammenarbeit, die wir mit der USA haben, ist da plötzlich in Frage gestellt. Das ist eine große Frage und es ist genau für diesen Grund, dass ich mal etwas sagen musste und nicht nur hier, aber auch für ein amerikanisches Publikum. Deswegen auch im New York Times, um zu erinnern, dass, ja klar, es gibt einfach diese historische Verbindung, wo Grönland und Dänemark einfach zusammengehören. Aber muss man auch etwas noch dazu bringen, das uns betrifft direkt. Es ist nie zu vergessen, dass Grönland ist gedeckt bei der Europäischen Konvention für Menschenrechte und auch gedeckt mit der Gerichtshof für Menschenrechte. Das ist eine sehr starke und matchentscheidende Verbindung zu Europa. Und muss man auch erinnern, als ich was mal in meiner Rede vorher gemacht habe, dass wir haben Werte. Wir haben eine langjährige Stabilität, die wir pflegen und die wir auch pflegen wollen und pflegen müssen. Was wollen wir und was müssen wir jetzt tun, auf diese Stabilität zu arbeiten? Langfristiges Denken zu unterstützen, nicht zu kurzfristig, das ist auch ein Problem, das wir immer haben, und immer auf die Werte arbeiten. Ich komme jetzt noch zweitens auf die Venedig-Kommission und I will change to English to tell you that we are strongly concerned about this evolution that we're just witnessing with the Venice Commission. The Venice Commission is a very, very important body, not for the Council of Europe. I mean, for constitutional law all around the world, it is a central body, it is a central institution that we have at the Council of Europe and can be very proud about what this institution is able to deliver for countries, for member states, I mean, in Europe, but also for non-member states. And I mean, for this reason, we have also a new president of the Venice Commission. I will have the occasion to meet the new president very soon, and I also intend to visit the Venice Commission soon, also to support the Venice Commission and to see what we can do together to have a strong and bright future for this Commission, because it is really needed at the moment we are living today.
Thank you, and on behalf of ECPA, Alexei Kocharenko.
Thank you. Dear Secretary General, first of all, thank you very much for your active job and a lot of support towards Ukraine. And I have two questions. First, unfortunately, we have a humanitarian catastrophe in Ukraine right now. In -20 weather, people live in apartments without heating, without electricity, often without running water. It's a humanitarian catastrophe. And unfortunately, I don't see humanitarian convoys, many lines of them entering Ukraine. We need everything, generators, warm clothes, food, everything. Maybe Council of Europe can call for the action and lead the efforts. And the second question is, when, in your opinion, the enlarged partial agreement on the Management Committee of the Special Tribunal be concluded? And can you help to fast forward it? Thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you very much for mentioning the humanitarian tragedy situation in Ukraine. It is not only that the country is under attacks from Russia since more than 10 years now, and full-scale invasion very soon, 5 years. It means also for civilian populations very hard and extremely, I mean, I think for us it's quite impossible to conceive and to understand what this exactly means. Probably you need to live this to understand what it means. Being since 5 years, more than 10 years under those attacks, and in particular in winter, for families, children, while also elder people, what it means. And thank you for recalling this and reminding us this. I can just tell you just a small anecdote. I was last week in contact with our team. You know that we have 100 agents from the Council of Europe working in Ukraine, at the side of the Ukrainian population and living in the same conditions. We also have agents from the Council exactly living what you are remembering us here. And I wanted to have this contact with them. I will have the occasion very soon, I hope, to visit Ukraine and also to visit the people and to visit the country and to see the civilian populations. And thank you for recalling this. It is really an impossible situation with, sub-zero temperatures and no heating and an impossible life. The second point you mentioned when, and I will tell you something at the beginning, at the end of the answer. At the beginning, ratify faster, decide faster, resource faster. What I mean by that? We did, and we are doing our job. I mean, for the accountability I mentioned before. Claims Commission is progressing very well. It will be important in the future. And for the special tribunal, we are also working hardly. We have, well, the whole preparation now with the advanced team on the legal framework, you know, all organizational questions, the discussions, all the elements to make this concrete. We need a kind of plug-and-play solution to go fast. What we need now is a clear and strong support from countries joining and then doing the maximum possible. When I was telling you ratify faster, I mean, we are in a phase with the Claims Commission. We have 35 countries having signed by the very first day in December. Excellent. But without ratification, we will not be able to make steps forward. We need now this ratification process, and we need now also the resources. For the special tribunal, it is the same situation. We need a clear situation on the resources, a clear situation on cost, what it will cost, and then we are delivering on our part to make it real. As I mentioned before, I mean, accountability is exactly part of democracy. There is no democracy without accountability, and particularly in war situations and after-war situations, as we see in Ukraine. That means where it is possible, where it is something to do, ratify faster, decide faster, resource faster.
Thank you. And on behalf of ALDE, Mrs. Kravchuk, dear Yevgenia.
Thank you. Congratulations, dear Petra. Secretary General, 100,000 of Ukrainians already filed their applications to the Claims Commissions. These are the same people that are without electricity and heat in Ukraine. When do you think compensation fund will start working, and how about the compensations, when people could see the compensations? And with regards to the fight against disinformation, when this toolbox you mentioned, the convention could be given to the countries, and what rapid instruments we can give now, because member states are waiting now. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary General.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. For the first element, I mean, you mentioned the Claims Commission, and just want to recall in this room that when the Register of Damage was created by the head of state and head of government in Reykjavik, it was in May 23. And now, less than 3 years later, it can be long, but it is at the same time really something efficient. We have not only a fully functioning register in The Hague, with also teams working in Ukraine. We have now more than 100,000 elements registered in the register, and the register is opening regularly new categories, and it will climb, and it will climb a lot in the next few months, to have, as far as possible, a clear view about what needs to be repaired and what needs to be compensated. That's the first point. The second point, in last December, we had this step made creating the Claims Commission. We also here need and have an advanced team working for the establishment of the Claims Commission, and then once we will have the Claims Commission, and once we will have enough countries having ratified the signature they gave in December, and also the resources, then it will be possible to act. I mean, we can just, and it is at the same time a lot and not enough. We can just, from the side of the Council of Europe, bring the logistics. We can bring, you know, the thinking about the whole structure that we need, and we can work on this, exactly what we are doing now. But without the full support and strong support of states, member states, also for the funding, it will take time. And we need now this. I could repeat what I told to your Ukrainian colleague before. I mean, to ratify faster, decide faster, and resource faster. About the second question, the second part of your question about disinformation and foreign interferences, I must tell you that, we had the case of Moldova, but we had a lot of different situations in Europe. I can mention here Romania, I can mention Poland, I can mention a lot of different countries, because nobody is protected against this situation right now, and we are fully aware about the risks also that we see for the next elections, for example, in Armenia, and for the day where it will be possible also to have elections in Ukraine, it will be also extremely risky. That means, speaking about the toolbox, it's maybe a bit too simple as a definition. I think it was just to underline that it's not just to speak about the fight against disinformation, it's not just about solemn statements against disinformation, it's to create something concrete. And well, it will take a bit time because we need to see if there is a political will from states to develop this convention on foreign interference and disinformation. We are at the moment doing a feasibility study. I think it's very soon finished. It will be this week. Thank you. And then we are continuing on this. It will be a discussion also with the Committee of Ministers. Chisinau and the Ministerial Conference in Chisinau will be really important to see what do we want to achieve together. That's the point. In the meantime, what can we do? It was your question. In the meantime, there is not much better to do as just to try to understand the experiences that we had in different countries, to see what works, what is not working, and to take those informations to see what it is possible in a country to do. But my point and our point should be, in Europe, not just to let each country reinventing the wheel, fighting against disinformation and foreign interference. We need to learn from each other, and that's exactly the purpose of a possible convention. And I mean, the next weeks and few months will be really decisive to see if we are able, if we are willing to do this. It will be not enough. It is not the convention or other things, or the convention. We must take all the possibilities we have to act. That means media literacy, education, all those elements are also central to have the strongest possible answer against disinformation and foreign interferences. It is just about protecting our democracies, protecting our democratic processes.
Thank you. And the last from the speakers on behalf of the group is for UL, Mr. Emmanuel Fernandez.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Monsieur le Secrétaire général, le 22 mai dernier, 9 États membres du Conseil de l'Europe publiaient une lettre ouverte remettant en cause l'indépendance de la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme, lui reprochant de restreindre leur action en matière migratoire, alors que la Cour ne fait que veiller au respect des droits humains pour toutes et tous. Cette lettre relayait les poncifs de l'extrême droite présentant les personnes migrantes comme une menace et appelant pour elle à une application dégradée des droits humains. 2 jours plus tard, vous répondiez avec force que dans un État de droit, le pouvoir judiciaire ne doit subir aucune pression politique et que les institutions protégeant les droits fondamentaux ne peuvent dépendre des cycles politiques. Alors pouvez-vous aujourd'hui réaffirmer votre totale étanchéité et celle du Conseil de l'Europe face à ces tentatives depuis réitérées de saper de l'intérieur ces fondements essentiels? Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup pour cette question qui touche à un sujet fondamental et qui concerne le Conseil de l'Europe en son cœur, à savoir l'indépendance des pouvoirs judiciaires que nous promouvons sur tout le continent, par ailleurs. On fait beaucoup d'efforts pour garantir que le message soit bien passé, pour aussi accompagner les pays qui revoient leur système judiciaire, qui adaptent leur législation, pour garantir cette indépendance judiciaire. Et donc c'est vrai qu'il est un peu, comment dire ça, curieux, peut-être saugrenu même, de voir que cette même indépendance judiciaire était un peu remise en question pour notre propre Cour par des États membres. Pas n'importe quels États membres, si je peux le dire ainsi, 9, qui sont par ailleurs tous membres de l'Union européenne. Un tiers des pays membres de l'Union européenne se sont alliés pour poser ces questions. Vous connaissez le début de l'histoire. J'ai été, je crois, assez critique et assez dur avec la méthode qui a été employée au départ. Un peu de mauvaise humeur sur une lettre qui n'a été adressée à personne, que je n'ai toujours pas vue, sinon dans les journaux, je me répète un peu, sur une lettre qui ne mentionnait pas le Conseil de l'Europe, mais l'OTAN, Dieu sait pourquoi. Et donc le départ ne s'est pas très bien passé. Cela dit, dès le moment où nous avons des États membres qui posent la question, une question de nature politique, qui est une question évidente, la question de la migration nous occupe toutes et tous. Elle vous occupe, elle m'occupe, elle nous occupe. C'est une question, c'est une réalité sociale, c'est une partie de notre fonctionnement d'État et de démocratie, à toutes sortes d'égards. Dès le moment où nous avons un tiers des États membres de l'Union européenne, 9 membres sur les 46 du Conseil de l'Europe qui posent cette question, il m'a semblé que la bonne réaction était de dire eh bien, nous devons faire en sorte que cette discussion qui nous concerne mais qui se passe ailleurs et sans nous, se passe chez nous. C'est la première chose. C'est une question presque de respect et dans le fond, d'identité du Conseil de l'Europe. Si on souhaite aborder la question migratoire en lien avec le Conseil de l'Europe, alors on le fait, mais à Strasbourg, pas ailleurs. Le deuxième élément, c'est que si nous souhaitons aborder cette question, alors on l'aborde sur le plan politique, et pas en commençant par mettre une pression sur la Cour. Raison pour laquelle nous avons organisé en décembre une conférence ministérielle ici à Strasbourg, donc, qui a réuni des ministres de la justice des pays membres pour parler de la question migratoire. Les deux objectifs étaient atteints. Un, retour à Strasbourg. Deux, discussion politique. Ça, c'était le but. Les choses se poursuivent maintenant. Je crois que nous devons trouver un équilibre entre, évidemment, la question légitime ou les questions légitimes qui sont soulevées par des États. Et je crois que de mettre les questions sous le tapis ou de suivre une politique de l'autruche serait la pire des stratégies à moyen terme. À court terme, c'est le plus facile. La poussière sous le tapis, à court terme, ça marche bien. Mais plus tard, on la retrouve. Et donc, à moyen terme, eh bien, nous devons traiter cette question. Je pense que nous devons la traiter. Nous avons commencé à la traiter dans les cadres qui savent le faire. Il y a eu d'ailleurs des premières discussions au CDDH récemment, qui est l'organe qui traite de ces questions. Et nous devons, avec ça, à la fois traiter de la question migratoire, mais protéger l'indépendance du judiciaire. C'est ça qui doit être possible, c'est notre objectif. Et il ne faut pas oublier non plus que le judiciaire ne tombe pas du ciel. C'est une émanation de volonté populaire. La séparation des pouvoirs, les institutions, ce sont des volontés, dans le fond, portées par les peuples qui les ont mises en place et de manière assez naturelle, eh bien, comme les sociétés évoluent, ces réflexions et les pressions qui peuvent exister évoluent aussi. Nous devons les canaliser, les mettre au bon endroit et ne renoncer à rien lorsqu'il s'agit de l'indépendance du judiciaire. Et donc, vous avez, la réponse à votre question, c'est oui. Nous faisons tout cela pour garantir l'indépendance du judiciaire, de notre Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. Pourquoi? Parce que si nous ne le faisions pas, alors nous nuirions nous-mêmes à notre propre impact sur le territoire européen. Mais en même temps, la question migratoire existe. Tout le monde a un avis sur la question, vous aussi, moi aussi. Et dans le fond, dans une démocratie, il est toujours légitime de débattre de tous les sujets qui paraissent pertinents pour les uns et pour les autres.
Thank you very much. I will now give the floor to other speakers and will group them always in three and then turn over to the Secretary General for his answer to the questions. And the first is Amen Gevrogian.
Mr. Secretary General, yesterday it was an opportunity to discuss with you the challenging political situation in Armenia ahead of the upcoming elections. It's important that the Council of Europe does not remain indifferent to ongoing human rights violations and democratic backsliding. But today I would like to ask you about the Armenian prisoners in Baku. Are you negotiating with the Azerbaijani authorities for their unconditional release as part of your efforts to return the Azerbaijani delegation to PACE? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Sergei Sobolyev.
Mr. Secretary General, thank you very much for your support of Ukraine. And my question, maybe it's time to continue the initiatives of Defense Rammstein that is working excellent, Energy Rammstein that is started only now. And maybe it's a good initiative to proclaim Housing Strasbourg initiative on the base of register of damages that can unite all countries, not only 46 countries, but all countries in the world, in support to give possibility for all Ukrainians to receive housing after horrible attacks of Russia. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bianca Eugenia Gavrila. I see she is not here. Then we continue with Titus Kalatian.
Secretary General, having in mind the fundamental importance of relaunching the peace process in the Middle East and the important role played during the years by the Council of Europe and its Parliamentary Assembly as a platform of contacts and political dialogue between the representatives of Israel and Palestine, and we saw yesterday the solid and very constructive debate in the political committee, don't you envisage for the future to increase the profile and the contribution of our organization in this field, for instance, through a special envoy of the Council of Europe in that region, in domains like democratic security, fundamental human rights, and democratic rules? Thank you.
And the line over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the possibility to answer. I will start maybe with your question. If I understood well, you are speaking about the situation with the prisoners in Azerbaijan. It's difficult for me to comment on individual legal cases in member states. But I want to recall in this situation that it is really important that all member states respect the obligations that they have regarding the Council of Europe and the values and European Convention on Human Rights in their respective legal systems and also in the concrete cases. It's always the same for me. I mean, we try to protect and to reinforce always the role of the European Convention and from the European Court on Human Rights. And as we know, we have cases coming here, and we need to give the possibility to the court to take decisions without to undermine this, taking positions before. Saying this, I can see that we had in the last months very good and positive expectations about the peace process between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and it is not going as fast and as deep as we have been expected. I mean, once again, we must also accept and see the situation that it is more complicated than we have been told it was. I can remember last summer, you know, the relations between two countries under the auspices of the American president. Peace has been made, and now we are still in some difficulties, and we need to make some progress on this. You also addressed at the very beginning of your question, I think, the question in Armenia. I mean, I don't want to engage in this now because you didn't put a precise question on this. Just to recall also the importance for all member states to respect all the rights guaranteed by the European Convention on Human Rights. That means for the rule of law and all ongoing legal proceedings, including obviously those involving political opposition and activists. To the second question, thank you for the question. If I understood well about an accountability summit, if I understood well the question, I'm not sure because I think it was what I understood. I will try to answer in this answer. I mean, we did and we will continue to do a lot on this. And I mean, the meeting that we had in December in The Hague was exactly going in this direction. We have different elements. It is part of a framework. And I think it is also good not to take all those elements together, you know, and just to mix everything with everything, because we have a clear structure lines. Can recall and remind in this context that the European Court of Human Rights is the first, and I would say, important body functioning, working. At the moment where we are speaking, Tuesday morning here in Strasbourg, just next door, I would say, the European Court of Human Rights, they are working on cases and adjudicating cases of violations of human rights in the war in Ukraine after the aggression of Russia. They are doing this. They must continue, not only on individual cases, but also on interstate cases. And just to recall in this context, the interstate cases published last July between, Netherlands and Ukraine against Russia, with clear result and very important statements and very important elements in this decision. The second element, with the Register of Damage Claims Commission, it was this summit, I would say, last December in The Hague, a very important moment for the development of accountability and to underline the fact that we are clear, we have a clear line, we are strong, And we are doing one step after another, clearly, without to stop. This is the main message. We are not subject to influences, what's happening. We are doing the job, independently of the context. And the same for the special tribunal. As I mentioned before, it was one important, I think I gave some elements to answering this. That means we have those avenues. We are open, and I'm open also in a bilateral way to discuss all possible elements that you may think about. But I think we are, because it is the first priority that we have. And I explained before, it's not only just, for supporting Ukraine. That's the most important thing. It supports all of us. And it is decisive for democracy, because there is no democracy without accountability, once again. Thank you for the question about Middle East. I mean, you're fully right. We are also strongly concerned because the rights we are standing for at the Council of Europe and the values that we have, they are not just for our member states or just for us. I mean, human rights are universal. And they are the same human rights, I mean, in Gaza or in the Middle East or in other parts of the world or in Europe, in our member states. You have been calling for a more engaged position of the Council of Europe. Thank you also for bringing to us the very positive assessment that you have made about the meeting yesterday. I think it was an important moment to have this meeting, and I was really happy to hear about the positive outcome. It's not the end of the history, it's the beginning of something, and I take it was not only a question, it was more I would say a call that you've made. I can just assure you that we are really, really concerned with what is happening, and we always need to find the right balance between what we can say and what we can do. Because just to speak is good, but it's not enough. And we need then to envisage, I mean, the next steps. We have also an important element with the whole discussion that we launched and I launched last year about the external policy of the Council of Europe, external action. We are defining this. I mean, the Committee of Ministers is working exactly on this, and probably in this context, we can also readdress these issues.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Seda Gören.
C'est venu? D'accord. Merci Madame la Présidente et félicitations encore une fois. Monsieur le Secrétaire général, au cours de l'année écoulée, certains États membres du Conseil de l'Europe ont pris des initiatives critiquant l'interprétation de la Convention par la Cour en matière de migration irrégulière. Ma question ressemble beaucoup à Monsieur Fernandez, à celle de Monsieur Fernandez, mais je pense qu'il est important d'y revenir encore une fois. Donc, c'est pour cela que et ces positions ont mis en évidence des divergences entre les États membres sur cette question. Dans le cadre de vos efforts que nous avons témoignés visant à renforcer l'unité du Conseil, que nous soutenons pleinement, quelles mesures supplémentaires envisagez-vous pour y répondre? Je vous remercie.
Mr. Vardanyan, dear Vladimir.
Thank you, Secretary General. Just a small reminder, prisoners of war should be repatriated just after the end of hostilities. And this is the provision of the general international law and general international humanitarian law. And my question is the following. UN security system existed for a long time. It was never efficient, but now we are facing partial or total collapse of the UN system. What do you think? Is this possible, the existence of the Council of Europe in the environment where the international order is totally collapsed? Thank you.
Thank you. And the last in this round, Larissa Belosia.
Dear Secretary General, thank you for maintaining your focus on Ukraine. I wanted to stress that the scale of destruction of Ukraine is such big that 2 million households lost their homes or their homes were damaged, and only 23,000 received certificates in order to buy the new homes. And actually, 25% of these homes were bought by the money of the European Council Development Bank. And this is 6,000 certificates, mostly internally displaced persons and veterans with disabilities. I would like to draw your attention and to elaborate and to help us to enlarge this program in order for people to receive more homes, because these programs turn to be very effective and very successful. And the Bank of Europe and the Council of Europe Bank only has Ukraine in 5% of its portfolio, and maybe we could enlarge this program as it is turned to be very successful. And again, very big thanks to you for supporting Ukraine.
Mr. Secretary General.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je vais commencer par pour dire quelque chose encore sur la question des migrations. Je crois que, en fait, les éléments de réponse étaient présents tout à l'heure. Je pense que nous devons réussir, et ce n'est pas quelque chose de très simple, hein, je le conçois volontiers, nous devons réussir à prendre et à débattre de tous les sujets qui sont jugés légitimes et importants par des États membres. Là, la volonté était claire en réalité, mais on doit réussir à le faire d'une manière qui permet d'avancer sur le plan politique, mais qui ne porte pas préjudice à l'indépendance du système judiciaire. Je le dis comme ça et on a l'impression que c'est un peu compliqué au niveau du Conseil de l'Europe. Mais je voudrais juste vous rappeler qu'en principe, c'est ce que font tous les États membres. Prenant des décisions politiques dans les parlements, il y a des gouvernements qui ont des fois des positions dures, il y a des gouvernements qui changent. Mais enfin, la stabilité du système, c'est de réussir à mener des discussions de nature politique, même si elles sont difficiles, en rappelant dans ce cadre que c'est très important de faire des débats ensemble quand on est d'accord sur tout. Mais c'est encore beaucoup plus important de débattre ensemble quand on n'est pas d'accord. C'est là que ça devient vraiment intéressant et qu'on essaye de définir un chemin commun. Et c'est ce que vous faites dans les États, dans vos parlements, et j'espère que vous le faites en garantissant l'indépendance des pouvoirs judiciaires. Sinon, ce n'est pas partout le cas, je le vois bien. Sinon, naturellement, on affaiblit la portée du système. Alors c'est assez intéressant parce qu'en faisant cet exercice au Conseil de l'Europe, il y a eu des voix qui se sont élevées pour dire il ne faut surtout pas parler de ça. Il ne faut pas parler de cette question. Et puis bon, alors moi, l'image que ça éveillait chez moi, c'était un peu une image de dire si on n'en parle pas, qu'est-ce qui se passe ensuite? Est-ce que la question va disparaître parce qu'on n'en parle pas? Non, elle ne va pas disparaître en fait. Elle va se transformer, elle va peut-être devenir encore plus compliquée, la pression va monter. C'est comme dans une cocotte minute. Hein. Si on ne s'en occupe pas, un jour, ça peut exploser. Et donc, nos systèmes démocratiques et nos institutions démocratiques ont aussi cette fonction de pouvoir débattre de tout, même quand c'est difficile, et d'essayer de voir ce que l'on peut faire et quel est le chemin qu'on peut prendre. Donc, celles et ceux qui me disaient il ne faut surtout pas en parler, ça me paraissait être une stratégie peut-être valable à très court terme, mais dangereuse à moyen terme. Et d'autres ont dit « Ah ben tiens, vous acceptez d'en parler, mais vous voulez faire ça sur le plan politique, alors que ce qu'il faut faire, c'est dire à cette Cour que maintenant ça suffit. » Ça ne va pas non plus, pour les raisons que j'ai expliquées tout à l'heure. Nous devons donc trouver ensemble une voie qui se permette d'aborder les problèmes, de discuter de tout sans tabou, mais qui renforce les institutions plutôt que de les affaiblir. S'il y a une chose, je crois que tout le monde est d'accord là-dessus, qui caractérise notre continent et nos institutions et les pays membres et le Conseil de l'Europe, c'est d'être capable de réfléchir, fondé sur des institutions qui sont stables, de réfléchir à plus long terme. De ne pas nous laisser complètement déborder par l'ultra court terme. C'est ça qui pourrait nous détruire. À ultra court terme, dans la prochaine seconde, vous pouvez perdre l'orientation, ne plus savoir où est le haut, le bas, la gauche, la droite, le froid, le chaud. Ça, c'est la pire des choses pour une démocratie, parce qu'une démocratie a besoin d'orientation. Et il faut donc réfléchir à plus long terme. Et quand je dis long terme, c'est quoi? Si je vous parle de 15 ou de 20 ans, vous connaissez mon amour pour les réflexions qui sont liées au temps, à la temporalité. Si je vous parle de 15 ou 20 ans, vous allez vous dire, c'est une éternité. 20 ans. 2046. Ça sonne presque comme un film de science-fiction. 2046, c'est demain, en fait. Et la plupart d'entre nous seront, je l'espère, je vous le souhaite, en tout cas encore là. Donc ayons la force et le courage de penser dans ces catégories de temps, y compris d'ailleurs pour les questions qui vous concernent. Je me suis un peu égaré dans la réponse, pardonnez-moi, mais en parlant librement, c'est toujours un peu le risque. Thank you for the question about if I understood well the total collapse of international order. If I understood well. And I think that I'm not agreeing with you about international order would be totally collapsing. We have now, we had in the past a very long period of huge stability. That doesn't mean that we didn't have extremely difficult situations, brutal wars in different parts of the world on our continent. Just also think about the situation in the Balkans in the 90s, I mean, Ukraine now. But it was, in the Cold War, a long period of stability, maybe a kind of fake stability, because in the meantime, the world was evolving. And if we have this strong stability in an evolving world, without to understand exactly what's happening, one day, the tension is too big, and you have a chaotic development. And maybe we are witnessing this right now, kind of chaotic moments, also because alliances are put in question, also because we are seeing maybe some important elements of the world we want to live in, based on international law, based on the rule of law, based on democracy and human rights, challenged under strong pressure, maybe even disappearing in some part of the world. That's the case. And the question is not for us just to be lost in this chaotic moment, is to try to define the lines, to see what we want to achieve and what we need to do to protect and to develop further our ways of life. Based on the values, I mean, it's exactly what this House is supposed to do, what we are doing. And I think in this context, we have the strong elements for delivering on this, and it is exactly what we are doing with this link between accountability and democracy, and also on the new democratic pact for Europe. For the last question, thank you very much for putting the question. I mean, it was not a question, I think it was more a call, and I will take the elements you mentioned. We will have a look in this, and I think it is linked to the whole discussion we will have also on the next steps for the claims commission. Among other elements, I see what you mean, among other elements, but we need to have a comprehensive context and to make sure that we can have a positive contribution for the development of Ukraine in an organized manner for the population first. It must be in this sense, and I take your call an interesting element that we will have a look in.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the question hour with our Secretary General. Thank you very much, Alain, for responding to our questions. And before we will proceed with the commemoration ceremony, I will leave some minutes for the protocol to prepare and to give everybody the chance to take their seats. Thank you very much.
The first association. You have a marvelous. It's a great one. I just said that. That's not that I can tell you, but some of it's fun of that. I like that.
May I invite you to take your seats, please? And stop chatting. Madam President of the Republic of Moldova, Your Excellency, Mr. Secretary General of the Council of Europe, dear Alain, the Right Honorable Lord Dubs, very welcome, Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Today we commemorate the victims of the Holocaust. 6 million Jewish women, men and children murdered by the Nazi regime, as all those who were persecuted, deported, tortured and killed because they were deemed to be unworthy of life. Roma, Sinti, queer people, political opponents, people with disabilities, and many, many more. This day is, and first and foremost, of course, a day of remembrance and of respect. But within the Council of Europe, it must also be a day of responsibility, because remembrance alone is not sufficient. The Council of Europe was created in direct response to the atrocities of the Second World War. Its very foundations rest on the conviction that peace in Europe can only be secured through the protection of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. For this reason, Holocaust remembrance cannot be understood as a reflection of the past alone. It is indispensable from our political choices at the present. We often hear calls to finally close this chapter of history, but history cannot be closed. We can and we must be sustained in responsibility. Even if today's young generation bear no responsibility, no personal guilt. We, especially those who come from German-speaking countries, carry a shared obligation to ensure that the lessons of the Holocaust are translated into concrete political action today. Never again is not a symbolic phrase. It is a political commitment. A commitment to defend human dignity, a commitment to protect minorities, and a commitment to resist the erosion of democratic norms wherever it occurs. I have had the privilege of speaking with Holocaust survivors, and their testimonies remind us that the mass atrocities do not begin with violence alone. The Holocaust did not start with extermination camps. It began with language, with exclusion, with the gradual normalization of discrimination and the systematic denial of rights, with the stigmatization of specific groups, with the political acceptance of the idea that some lives matter less than others. Jews were targeted first, but not alone. Roma and travelers, people with disabilities, LGBTIQ persons, political opponents, and many others were persecuted under an ideology that rejected equality itself. The history is not distant. It is deeply relevant for the present moment. The responsibility becomes more relevant in the current European context of multifaceted crisis and war, of the alarming increase of anti-Semitism, racism, and hate speech, both offline and online, often boosted by algorithms and artificial intelligence. Anti-Semitism is visible today in violent attacks, in conspiracy narratives, in the glorification or relativization of Nazi crimes, and in the growing normalization of hate. Memory becomes therefore institutional, structured, and forward-looking. This makes the mission of the Council of Europe more essential than ever, and I would like to pay tribute to the long-standing work of the organization in this field. In my report in 2022 on to prevent and combat anti-Semitism in Europe, I share some concrete examples on how approaches in our member states can look like to fight the dislike of the unlike, and I'm very happy also to hear some of these voices here today. The European Convention on Human Rights, the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, and our parliamentary monitoring mechanisms are not abstract legal tools. They are safeguards against every process that once led Europe to the catastrophe. As President of the Parliamentary Assembly, I wish to state clearly, remembrance obliges us all. It obliges us to confront anti-Semitism wherever it appears, even if it's politically uncomfortable. It obliges us to reject historical distortion, even when it serves short-term interests. And it obliges us to defend human rights constantly, not selectively. Holocaust remembrance must never become a ritual that reassures us. Rather, it must remain a moment that challenges us, because democracy does not collapse overnight. It erodes gradually when violations are tolerated, when hate is normalized, and when silence replaces responsibility. Our task at the Council of Europe is precisely to refuse this silence, today and every day that follows. Thank you very much. It is now my honor to give the floor to Her Excellency Mrs. Maya Sandu, President of the Republic of Moldova.
President of the Assembly, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, we gather today to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust while also acknowledging a responsibility for the present. Because remembrance is never an act of looking backward alone. It is also a token of how honestly we look at the world as it is today. Last year, I visited Auschwitz. I walked through the gates. I listened to testimonies. I stood in silence where all words fail. And what struck me was both the horrendous, unimaginable scale of the crime and the nefarious path that led to it. The Holocaust did not begin with gas chambers. It began with words, with the slow erosion of human empathy, with the normalization of exclusion and the quiet acceptance of injustice. It became possible when human life became disposable and when hatred became policy. 6 million Jews were murdered simply for being Jews. Alongside them, Roma and Sinti, people with disabilities, and many others were persecuted, tortured, and killed. Today, we must ask ourselves honestly, are we so certain such a tragedy can never happen again? The world is on a slippery slope. The precipice towards authoritarianism is closer than ever. Across Europe and beyond, hate is once again spreading. Anti-Semitism is rising. Conspiracy theories are flourishing. Violence is normalized in language long before it appears in actions. At the same time, on the global stage, power is increasingly placed over principle, force over law, domination over cooperation. The rules-based international order, born from the lessons of the Second World War, so that never again would truly mean never again, is at a turning point. The Holocaust was possible because the world lacked the rules and the collective will to protect the vulnerable and hold perpetrators accountable. And that is why remembrance alone is not enough. Never again is not a promise that sustains itself. It is a responsibility we must renew through our institutions, our choices, and our courage. We owe this not only to the victims we remember today, but to future generations who will ask whether we recognized the warning signs that the world is sliding back towards the renewed devaluation of respect for human dignity in time. And time is now. Now, because responsibility cannot be postponed without consequence. Now, because history does not judge intentions, but actions or inaction. Let us have the courage to act before remembrance turns into regret. Thank you.
Now it is my honor to give the floor to Lord Dubs. He was one of the 669 Czech residents, mainly Jewish children saved by British stockbroker Nicholas Winton and others from the Nazis on the Kindertransport between March and September 1939. Thank you very much for having taken the journey to come to Strasbourg to share your memories with us on this tragic moment. You have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed for this invitation. I'm honored to be here on for such an important event. And I'm delighted to follow the Moldovan president, a country that I visited frequently, and I hope to visit again before too long. I was asked to say a little bit about my family history. I was born in Prague. My father was Jewish, my mother wasn't. My father was not political, but somehow he had a sense of what was happening. Because he said to his cousins, if the Nazis come to Prague, and we're talking about 1939, if the Nazis come to Prague, I'm leaving. And they said, oh, we'll take our chance. And tragically, in 1942, the Gestapo took them to Auschwitz. I remember when the Germans occupied Prague, we had to tear, I was 6 years old, had to tear a picture of President Beneš out of our school books and stick in a picture of Hitler. Somehow, that was a dramatic moment, which I remember well. My mother was refused permission to leave. She was denied an exit permit, so she got me onto a Kindertransport, one of several. I left Prague June 1939, one of the youngest. The train took a long time, crossed Germany. We got to the Netherlands border, where the older ones cheered because we're out of reach of the Nazis. I knew it was significant, but at the age of 6, how could I tell what it actually all meant? English was my third language. I spoke Czech and German, so I had to learn English, and I fully understand what happens to people who have to learn languages when they come as refugees to other countries. Some of this background was actually characterized very clearly by Nicholas Winton in the film about him. Nicholas Winton was the person who organized, with help, the Kindertransport from Prague to London. I didn't meet him for many years, and he kept very quiet about it all, but then at one point he was on television, and I got to know him, and I got to know him pretty well. A remarkable man. He did something which other people don't do. He was invited to go to Prague. He was skiing in Switzerland as a young man, invited to go to Prague to see what was happening as Jewish people were fleeing from the Sudetenland, which had then been occupied as the first stage of occupation of Czechoslovakia. And he looked at this and he said, this is a problem. A lot of people say that. And then he said, I must do something. And that's what made him different. He actually said, I'm going to do something about it. It's very easy to say there's a problem in life. Oh dear, somebody else can deal with it. He actually began to deal with it. And I suppose I'm very moved in talking about him because he saved my life. The recent film called One Life about him was pretty accurate historically, and I found it's shown again. It was on the BBC the other day. It's shown again quite frequently. He died not long ago, well, 2 years ago, at the age of 106. And I used to go to his birthday parties at his house in Maidenhead, near London, or indeed at the Czech and Slovak embassies. And I said to him once, he was about 103, I said, "Nicky, how are you?" And he said, "I'm fine from the neck upwards." And he was intellectually sharp until the end. Anyway, my mother did manage to escape at the last minute. My father died soon afterwards, so it's just my mum and me in England. My mum's English was pretty nil, and it was quite tough for her, very tough for her. So I developed an interest in politics as a result of all this, trying to understand the experiences. And after the war, my mum visited Prague, and frankly, all the people we'd known in Prague had either ended up in the camps or had left the country. So there was no one left there. More recently, I went on a visit to Auschwitz with a friend who'd also fled Czechoslovakia, and we found ourselves both looking at the suitcases piled up there. Those of you that have been in Auschwitz will know the suitcases. And in those days, people put their initials on, and we were all looking, both of us were looking to see whether anybody we knew had their suitcase there. We didn't see that, but it was quite a momentous visit. Now, more recently, I became a local councillor, and I was elected to the House of Commons, and then later on I was put in the House of Lords. And I still remember the first time I was asking Margaret Thatcher, who was then Prime Minister, a question, and I stood up in the Commons. I was nearly as nervous then as I am this morning, and I was so taken aback that I, a refugee, was asking the British Prime Minister a question that I nearly forgot what I was supposed to ask her. But that was one of the interesting events. Perhaps more interesting was this. I was asked more recently to go to a school in East London in Tower Hamlets. I was asked to go and talk about the Holocaust and about refugees. And the project for the boys in this school, who were pretty well all Muslim, it was a maintained school, but pretty well all Muslim, was Kindertransport in the Holocaust. And when we got to the Q&A, the first question was, what do I say to somebody who denies the Holocaust ever happened? And I thought that was a terrific question to be asked by a Muslim boy in East London. And it was a tribute to the school as well, that he saw this as an important question and something that affected him. And I think one of the real challenges is to educate young people. I mean, I'm a much older generation. I'm probably the oldest person in the room. And I was 6 in 1939, and not anything I boast about. However, I think the real challenge is to educate young people about the Holocaust. And the statistics of awareness of the Holocaust among young people they're actually quite disappointing in most European countries. Certainly, when one does talk to kids at school, they tend to get it. I've talked to lots of Jewish schools, for example, in London, and they're very supportive of refugees who are mainly Muslim, apart from Ukrainians. So it's interesting, the Jewish community in Britain has been very supportive of Muslim refugees, and I think that needs to be said. More recently, I was invited to go to Berlin to visit the Bundestag, where there was an exhibition of Kindertransport memorabilia on display there. I found that a very moving occasion. It's been put together, a brilliant exhibition. Again, it brought back memories, and they showed letters of people who'd written, children who'd written home, or parents who'd written to them while it was still possible for such letters to be written. And can I say, incidentally, and this is something I'm not saying here because there's some Germans in the audience, because I've said it in British Parliament and elsewhere, but I think Germany has come to terms with its past brilliantly. And I have to pay a tribute to Germany for having, and coming from me, I hope that means something. And the previous German ambassador, who's just left London, he attended pretty well every event I ever went to commemorate the Holocaust and Kindertransport and so on. And I think it needs to be said. I think it's sad that since the tragic events in Israel on October the 7th, there's been such an increase in anti-Semitism and in Islamophobia across many European countries, although I speak mainly for the UK. We've seen attacks on synagogues, and of course there was a tragic murder recently in Australia as well. So this is a worldwide issue, and anti-Semitism has not gone away, and if anything, it has come back. One statistic in one survey in the UK among 18 to 29-year-olds, 1/3 of them could not name a single concentration camp. Isn't that shocking? And yet the Holocaust Education Trust in London, in the UK, does a brilliant job. And they take young people to Auschwitz, and they have young people as ambassadors who also spread the word to other schools. So they do a great job. But clearly, even with the great efforts they're putting into it, more needs to be done. Because I think we have to make sure that the next generation, or generations coming along, understand it. Because then people like me will no longer be around. And people, above all, who've survived the camps will no longer be around. And it's important that the message goes on being spread to the next generation. Because if we lose that generation, we've lost the whole argument. We're setting up a Holocaust Memorial and Learning Center near Parliament. Very important. Many countries have done it. There are Holocaust museums, and these are important. But we've got to make sure people go to them. We've got to make sure people understand, and the message has to be taken to schools. And so the theme for Holocaust Memorial Day is bridging generations. And we have to remember those who were murdered for who they are and to stand against prejudice and hatred today. And we all have a responsibility. Just tell you, I finished by this. When I was first elected to the House of Commons, in those days parliaments sat even later through the night than is the case now. And I'd just been elected. I had all the pomposity of a newly elected MP, and I arrived at midnight to take part in a debate. And the policewoman was at the door, and I said, "Good evening, I'm hoping to speak tonight." And she said, "Yes, sir, will it make any difference?" Now look, the theme for us has to be to make a difference. Because if we don't make a difference, if we don't spread the word about the Holocaust, if we don't spread a word about anti-Semitism, then it will come deeper and deeper into the system in our countries. So that is our responsibility, to make sure that we spread that message. And thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity this morning to take part in helping to spread that message. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lord Tubbs, for sharing your memories in such a clear and personal way, and also throwing parallels to today, and especially also to remind us that our task is to make a difference indeed. I now want to invite you to watch a video message by the Chief Rabbi of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine, Mr. Maya Stambler.
Mr. Alain Berset, Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Mrs. Petra Bayer, President of the Parliamentary Assembly, my dear friend Rabbi Mendel Samama, distinguished members of the Parliamentary Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, and especially our honored parliamentary delegation from Ukraine, I stand before you as a rabbi and a Jewish leader from Ukraine in the Jewish Museum of Ukraine in Dnipro. More than 80 years ago, on the soil of my country at Babin Yar, more than 33,000 Jews were murdered in 2 days. Throughout Ukraine, 1.5 million Jews were killed. Europe lost 6 million Jews, and an entire world was erased. But here is the miracle. Jewish life returned to Europe. In Ukraine today, the Federation of Jewish Communities of Ukraine bring together 160 communities with a network of schools, Jewish children grow up with pride and security, thanks to strong support from Ukrainian authorities. Ukraine has proven that you can build a multicultural society where every minority is protected. The Holocaust taught us vital lessons. When Europe saw early warnings, signs, and chose to look away, the failure to protect innocent people. And now, in our generation, we face a similar test, not identical. The Holocaust was unique in its horror, but the moral questions are similar. Will we stand against aggression or hope it goes away by itself? Will we protect the innocent or only count our own costs? Will we act while there is time or wait until it is too late? I believe there are no accidents in history. God chose you to be in these leadership positions right now. This is not just a privilege, it is a responsibility. The thriving Jewish life we built along with the entire Ukrainian population in Ukraine is under terror. Synagogues, schools, community centers, all within missile range, children who grow up in freedom now find themselves in shelters, freezing, without electricity, without steam. Let me ask you directly, are you doing what is right or what is comfortable? Because there is a difference your parents and your grandparents paid with millions of lives. You are not powerless. You have economic, military, and political power more than any previous generation in Europe. You can give us all the support we need, but must do it now. And the most important thing is to stop being afraid, because fear is one of the things that enabled the Holocaust. You have two more tests. First, anti-Semitism growing again in Europe, streets, synagogues with armed guards in Berlin, Paris, Amsterdam, a Jewish child afraid to wear a kippah on the streets of your capital. Where is your never again? Second, education. Not just one lesson per year about the Holocaust, but a culture of tolerance, of courage to resist a personal responsibility, so the next generation knows what to do when they face evil. The Holocaust taught us not to wait, that when you see evil, you act. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Mrs. Anina Siusiu. In 2024, she co-founded the Romanian Voyageur Youth Collective SOR, mobilized against structural anti-Semitism. Please, the floor is yours.
Madame la Présidente de l'Assemblée parlementaire, Madame la Présidente de la République de Moldova, Monsieur le Secrétaire général du Conseil de l'Europe, Mesdames, Messieurs les parlementaires, Mesdames, Messieurs les représentants des victimes de l'Holocauste, Mesdames, Messieurs. J'ai bien peur que l'Europe oublie son passé et qu'Auschwitz ne soit qu'endormi, écrivait avec justesse l'artiste autrichienne Rome, survivante du génocide Czeja Stojka. Et je crains malheureusement, quand je regarde le chaos du monde qui nous entoure, que son présage ne soit déjà accompli, puisque des atrocités sont perpétrées à plusieurs endroits du monde, au moment même où je vous parle. C'est bien donc que les crimes de l'Holocauste doivent être oubliés. Alors, les mots de Czeja Stojka résonnent en moi encore plus fort. Moi, jeune femme romnie, franco-roumaine, moi, arrière-petite-fille de déportés en Transnistrie, Moi qui, depuis mon enfance, ai vécu et me bats contre l'antitiganisme structurel qui continue depuis le génocide sous une forme atténuée, certes, mais fondée sur la même haine de notre race, a privé les 12 millions d'hommes, de femmes et d'enfants de leurs droits fondamentaux et de leur dignité en Europe. Parce que d'origine romanie. Alors oui, je le ressens, il est de notre responsabilité, à nous, jeunesse romanie européenne, nous qui sommes tous descendants de victimes ou de survivants de l'Holocauste, parce qu'effectivement, aucune de nos familles n'a été épargnée par cette folie exterminatrice, de faire sortir de l'oubli de l'histoire européenne et de faire vivre l'héritage de résistance que nos ancêtres nous ont légué et à qui nous rendons tous ici hommage ce jour. Mais il ne s'agit pas d'une tâche que nous réussirons à accomplir seuls. Cette lourde responsabilité, nous la partageons avec vous, mesdames et messieurs responsables au pouvoir en Europe. Alors, au nom des 500 000 hommes, femmes et enfants qui ont été méthodiquement assassinés, au nom des milliers d'hommes, de femmes et d'enfants déportés, internés, torturés, spoliés, humiliés, et au nom des milliers d'hommes, de femmes et d'enfants qui continuent aujourd'hui à subir ces atrocités, je vous le demande, redoublons d'efforts pour que l'histoire de ce processus industriel d'extermination soit connue, reconnue dans toute son ampleur, et qu'enfin il cesse pour tous et pour toujours. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. We will now hear a statement by Mr. Christian Kaminski, who is a cultural educator, researcher and translator based in Poland and a member of the board of Unia Równości, the Equality Union. Please, the floor is yours.
Madam President of the Parliamentary Assembly, Madam President of Republic of Moldova, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we gather here to remember the dead, but remembrance only matters if it protects the living. Holocaust remembrance confronts Europe with difficult truth. The greatest crimes of our times and past times are not committed by monsters. They are made possible by systems, political, legal and economic, that normalize exclusion and rewarded obedience. Today, we honor all those who were persecuted and murdered during the Holocaust, including those whose suffering was later pushed through to the margins of public memory. This includes LGBTQI persons targeted through criminalization, imprisonment, and deportation, and too often left without recognition after the war. In Lublin, where I work with Equality Union, we mark this remembrance each year by commemorating LGBTQI victims murdered at Majdanek, the former Nazi concentration and extermination camp. This local act of memory reminds us how easily persecution becomes invisible when it is pushed to the margins of history. As Madam President of the Parliamentary Assembly has already said, the Holocaust did not begin with camps or mass graves. It began with language that divided people into those who belonged and those who did not, with laws that quietly removed protection, with the idea that some lives could be suspended, postponed, or sacrificed for the so-called greater good. Europe again stands now at a crossroads. Across our societies, we see movements that promise order through fear, unity through exclusion, and security through the erosion of rights. They rarely announce themselves with open violence. They advance gradually through selective compassion, moral hierarchies, and the normalization of indifference. We also know that injustice does not survive on hatred alone. It is sustained when power aligns with profit, when suffering becomes distant, abstract, or inconvenient. When institutions choose neutrality in the face of dehumanization, neutrality itself becomes a political choice. Holocaust remembrance demands that Europe rejects this logic. It calls on us to recognize that human rights are indivisible, that they cannot depend on borders, proximity, identity, or political comfort. Solidarity cannot be selective. Protection cannot be conditional. Remembrance, if it is to mean anything, must be active. It must be an act of positioning. And today, Europe must clearly position itself on the side of dignity, accountability, and those whose voices are most easily silenced. The true measure of remembrance is not what we say today, but what we refuse to allow tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kaminski, and I'm now very pleased to invite Mr. Nicolas Laugel to take the floor. He is specialized in the history of the Jews in Alsace, especially between 1933 and 58. He has close ties with Yad Vashem and was also the scientific director of the Names Wall, inaugurated last year, in 2024 in Strasbourg. Please, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. Et je leur donnerai, dans ma maison et dans mes murs, un mémorial, Yad, et un nom, Shem, qui ne seront pas effacés, prophète Isaïe. C'est de ces paroles que l'Institut international pour la mémoire de la Shoah Yad Vashem tient son nom. Créé en 1953 par le Parlement israélien à Jérusalem, la Knesset, Yad Vashem a pour mission de perpétuer le souvenir et d'honorer la mémoire des 6 millions de Juifs assassinés par les nazis et leurs collaborateurs entre 1933 et 1945, de rendre hommage aux actes d'héroïsme, de révolte et de sauvetage des Juifs d'Europe, et d'enseigner cette histoire aux générations futures comme une balise d'avertissement contre toute forme d'antisémitisme. En novembre 2025, Yad Vashem a franchi une étape historique. 5 millions de noms de victimes juives assassinées ont été identifiés, rendant à chacune et à chacun sa place dans la mémoire collective. Depuis 1963, le titre de Juste parmi les nations, la plus haute distinction civile de l'État d'Israël, est décerné par Yad Vashem à des femmes et des hommes non juifs qui, au péril de leur vie, ont aidé des juifs persécutés par les nazis. Depuis le 7 octobre 2023, les demandes de reconnaissance de ce titre ont doublé. De nombreux survivants de la Shoah qui n'avaient jamais témoigné sortent aujourd'hui du silence, comme si, plus que jamais, l'histoire et la mémoire étaient les derniers garde-fous contre le mépris de l'humanité. Le 27 janvier dernier, à l'occasion du 80e anniversaire de la découverte d'Auschwitz et de l'horreur concentrationnaire, nous avons inauguré à Strasbourg, là où s'est levée la synagogue consistoriale du quai Kléber, incendiée à l'automne 1940 par un commando de la Hitlerjugend du pays de Bade, composé en partie d'Alsaciens, un mémorial au cœur de notre capitale européenne. Ce mémorial porte le nom des victimes restées sans sépulture ni lieu de recueillement. Sur ce mur figurent 1896 noms. Ces noms, je les ai cherchés un à un. J'ai retracé leur histoire, leur famille, leur vie, comme une modeste tentative de les faire sortir de l'oubli, de leur rendre la dignité humaine perdue à Auschwitz, et comme une réponse aux barbares qui voulaient qu'à jamais leur nom soit effacé. Dans la nuit, Elie Wiesel écrivait « Oublier les morts serait les tuer une seconde fois ». Ces paroles nous obligent. Nous ne serons pas les complices de leur seconde mort. Jamais nous n'arrêterons de lutter contre la négation de l'histoire, contre la falsification de la mémoire et contre l'antisémitisme. C'est pour cela que nous sommes aujourd'hui réunis, au cœur de l'Europe qui se souvient, à l'occasion de la journée internationale de commémoration dédiée à la mémoire des victimes de la Shoah. 6 millions de Juifs nous regardent et nous intiment l'ordre. Ne tolérez rien qui puisse faire renaître l'antisémitisme et l'extermination des Juifs. Soyons dignes de cet héritage pour l'élévation de leurs âmes. La flamme de la mémoire des 6 millions de Juifs assassinés est et restera éternelle. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Laugel. And I now would like to invite the representatives of the political groups to give brief statements. And first on my list is Mr. Frank Schwabe on behalf of the Socialists, Democrats and Green Group.
Madam President Bayer, Madam President Sandu, distinguished guests. The Holocaust was organized from German soil and by Germans. This fills me with great shame, and I'm therefore grateful that I may speak here, albeit on behalf of my parliamentary group, but nonetheless as a German. And it fills me with great shame that anti-Semitism, anti-Gypsyism, discrimination against LGBTIQ, discrimination against people with disabilities, racism, and general misanthropy, while never truly gone, are now resurfacing in a way that most of us never thought possible. The German playwright Bertolt Brecht wrote in his play The Irresistible Rise of Arturo Ui, "The womb is still fertile from which this crawled." It didn't happen overnight. We heard this several times today. It began with language, with denigration, with hatred, with petty acts of meanness in everyday life. That's why our task today in this Council of Europe as well is to resist it with everything we can. I'm grateful to all those who keep the memory of the Holocaust alive. Today, I'm especially grateful to Baron Alf Dubs, who, through his biography and the example of Sir Nicholas George Winton, demonstrates that even amidst inhuman, planned crimes against humanity, a glimmer of humanity was possible. This is our hope and our warning for today.
Thank you very much. We will now listen to Emanuelis Singeris on behalf of the European People's Party. Emanuelis, please. No, we don't hear you. And please don't forget to be brief.
Thank you. Today we are marking the incredible darkest page of the history of European nations. One of the Yiddish-speaking nation, disappeared. Every child was hunted by Nazis and their collaborators in every village. And of course, today we are making broader remembrance. I think the State of Israel was established like an answer, like an echo of the Second World War. And I am coming from a Holocaust surviving family. My mother spent 4 years in Nazi camp, Stutthof, and my grandfather in Dachau. So being a Yiddish speaker today and having the feeling that 5 million Yiddish speakers disappeared with 3,000-4,000 writers, poets, huge secular and religious culture. Now at least we have Hebrew language we have lullabies in Hebrew. Today I would like to say to Ambassador Cohen in Yiddish, Yiddische Volk will überleben, Am Israel Chai. But I would like to say to my friend Schwabe, I would like to thank you that Germany not built coalition with anti-Semitic parties in Germany. And we should follow in every country the example of Germany not making any government coalition with anti-Semitic parties who are now becoming a real factor in Europe. So I think the lesson after Second World War, that we should fight every day for our human face. And I would like to say that my mother were alone, and we fear Holocaust. People were absolutely alone, but today we are not alone. We should commit to the speech of Ukrainian rabbi who asked us to be united against evil. Please be united today, not like it was more like 80 years ago. Be united against hatred, racism, evil, and aggression, war of aggression on our European soil. I'm
Thank
Israel
you very
Hayek.
much. I now will give the floor to Scholt Nemeth, who will speak on behalf of the European Conservatives, Patriots, and affiliates. Dear Scholt, over to you.
Madam, I would like to start with saying that, dear colleagues, we are commemorating today here, and we are doing the right thing. I think the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe is doing the right thing for many years, and I would like to congratulate to all of us. Secondly, we do remember the 6 million Jews who perished in the gas chambers. And also, we remember that this was the darkest page of our common European civilization, our common civilization, not just the German. And also, we do remember, colleagues, that the direct start of this terrible horror was through the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, through the agreement between Hitler and Stalin, the totalitarian dictatorships in our continent. Commitment. Yes, we need to have two commitments. One commitment is for the Jewish life. And yes, in Europe, it is a miracle that there is Jewish life. I'm coming from Budapest, and there is a Jewish life in Budapest. And the renaissance of Jewish life is possible. And I think we must do everything in Europe to facilitate the renaissance of Jewish life in Europe. Secondly, we have to have a commitment towards the state of Israel. We Europeans have a commitment towards the state of Israel. Israel has the right to self-defense, and we must reject all new form of anti-Semitism, which is looking at us from the form of anti-Israeli attitudes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we now will hear from Julian Bulay on behalf of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats in Europe. Dear Julian.
Dear Vice President, stimată doamnă președintă, dear guests, I would like to begin by quoting Elie Wiesel, the Romanian-born Holocaust survivor and Nobel laureate. The opposite of love is not hatred, is indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. The opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. These words resonate deeply when we reflect on the grim chapters of history, such as the Holocaust and extermination of Roma people. These atrocities stand as a stark reminders that the bloodiest regimes do not only rely on fanatics or leaders, but often thrive because of the everyday participation of some and the indifference of others. Yet, history also teaches us that it only takes the courage of a few to say no, to stand up and refuse to comply with injustice, with the authoritarian repression. So, let us choose not to be indifferent. Let us resist apathy and refuse to accept discrimination and hatred. Together, our voices and actions can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last speaker is Mrs. Laura Castell on behalf of the group of the Unified European Left. Dear Laura.
Friends, comrades, today we bow our heads to remember the 6 million Jews and the millions of other individuals who were systematically murdered by the Nazi regime. Roma, Sinti, LGBTQ, people with disabilities, political dissidents, all of them. As it has already been said today, the Holocaust did not begin with the gas chambers. It began with the immunization of the other, with the slow erosion of solidarity. It was the horrific result of unchecked fascism, white supremacy, and a state apparatus used to protect the powerful by victimizing the vulnerable. Memory is not a passive act. To truly honor the victims, we must confront the rising tide of authoritarianism and xenophobia, and in our own time. We refuse to be bystanders, while rhetoric that mirrors the 30s creeps back into our political discourse. Never again means more than just about to remember the past. It is a radical commitment to the present. It means fighting for a world where no person is illegal, where every identity is celebrated, and where the machinery of hate is dismantled before it can take root. Let us honor the dead by fighting for the living. Let us build a future rooted in justice, equity, and an unwavering defense of our shared humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the statements. I would like to invite you now to listen to an artistic performance of the poem My Country, written by Mr. Hanusch Hachenburg in Theresienstadt. It is played by Mrs. Marie Hattermann and Mr. Tristan Lessine from the company Rodeo Dame. Please.
Je porte ma terre dans mon cœur. Elle est pour moi seule. Tissée par la beauté des fils, le rêve permanent est éternel. Je l'embrasse et la cajole et passe beaucoup de temps avec elle. Cette terre n'est pas dans ce monde et pourtant, elle est partout en nous. Cette terre est au paradis, dans les étoiles, où il y a une nation oiseau. Aujourd'hui, je la vois dans mon âme, et je pourrais pleurer de solitude. Un jour, je devrais voler vers les hauteurs, libérée des liens de mon corps. Je serai libre, lointain et large. Et toute ma terre sera libre. Aujourd'hui, elle est petite. Un grain de rêve forme son isolement. Elle se montre à travers cet endroit lors des jours mélancoliques, empilés par les fureurs de la guerre. Un jour, j'entrerai dans ma terre et serai joint à ma terre natale. Là est ma terre. Là est votre terre. Où il n'y a pas de moi et pas de souffrance.
Thank you for this excellent conclusion of our ceremony here in the room. I must remind you that a vote has been in progress to elect 2 judges for the European Court of Human Rights. The vote is now closed. We shall announce the results of this morning when we resume this afternoon. And before we proceed to the 4th court, to continue the commemoration ceremony, we will adjourn this sitting. The Assembly will hold its next public sitting this afternoon at 3:40 p.m. with the agenda approved yesterday. The sitting is adjourned, and I now invite you all to come to the forecourt of the palace. Thank you very much.